The wailing winds of the winter storm hurl themselves against the sturdy manor. It is a furious display of nature that would be enough to kill if anyone was still outside. But the home of Balthian, legendary hero of the kingdom of Matysia, stands tall. It has withstood worse. Inside, Balthian sits across his dinner table from the two Azurescale trainees, Fatine and Rusen. Behind Balthian, his wife Jennia has just returned with her painting tools and begins setting up a fresh canvas on her easel.
What is she doing?
Don't mind me. Not often I get new subjects.
We all have our hobbies. She paints, and I've picked up gardening. We have a special greenhouse out in the back. I grew the vegetables in your soup.
A very heroic achievement.
What about you two?
We don't have much time for more than training right now.
I remember how busy I was in training. That doesn't change much once you're a full knight.
Hey, isn't that the Vukoran behemoth?
Rusen points towards a painting on the wall behind Balthian. It depicts a terrifying monster. 8 limbs, 2 large wings, the snarling head of a wolf, and a large curled tail with a sharp blade of bone at the end, facing off against 6 warriors.
Good eye. My very first adventure. And the first adventure of the Azurescale Knights as a whole.
But who are those others? All the stories say you killed the behemoth alone.
That is what happened, right?
Well, I suppose this will be our next story then. Maybe you can learn something that might prepare you for your own first battle, once the war with the Krizalka begins.
Balthian gives a pained smile as he drums his fingers against the table. And then he speaks of his first adventure 40 years ago. Balthian pushed open the doors to the throne room of King Hadwen and entered alongside 5 of his fellow Azurescale Knights. Clad in freshly forged blue-tinted armor, the 6 knights, barely older than Fatine and Rusen, marched confidently up to their king.
You are the best of the Azurescales?
One of the knights, a raven-haired woman named Ivelle, stepped forward.
We are, Your Grace. What do you need of us?
I'm sure you've heard of the Triumvirate Fortress. It lies to the southeast next to the Tarkasan and Balsavi borders. It is vital to our trade with both realms, and it has recently fallen to a Vukoran behemoth.
They still exist?
Apparently. You must go and reclaim this fortress, and you must do it before either the Tarkasans or Balsavi send their own parties to claim it for themselves.
Do not fear, Your Grace. The behemoth will fall.
As soon as the young Azurescales exited the throne room, their excitement could no longer be contained.
Can you believe it? Such an important mission, so soon out of training.
It is very exciting.
Come on, Ivelle. We're on a special mission from the king himself, and you sound like you're falling asleep.
I said it's exciting.
Whatever. You'll start jumping and yelling when you get your own castle for this.
I might.
And so the 6 neophyte Azurescale Knights journeyed southeast towards the Triumvirate Fortress and the glory that awaited them. Their journey was long, but relatively painless. The few bandits foolish enough to accost a party of 6 armed and armored warriors were easily disposed of. After many days, they passed through the Bellridge Peaks and beheld their destination. The Triumvirate Fortress was a tall, rectangular tower presiding over the convergence of 3 gravel roads. When the Azurescales saw it, their excitement reached a fever pitch.
All right, where is the beast?
Would it be inside?
You think a monster like that could open doors?
Keep your heads. We're probably still too far to see it anyway.
Suddenly, the sky darkened, and a rhythmic whooshing wind swept down upon the knights. They looked up to see the flying, multi-limbed nightmare descend from on high and land directly on top of one of their number, crushing both him and his horse.
It killed Jonias! Attack!
The remaining 5 Azurescales drew their weapons and charged. With the swing of one of its many clawed feet, the behemoth knocked one of the knights into another and crushed them and their horses. The beast bellowed.
We can't do this. We can't do this.
The behemoth reached out with its tail, stabbing Ivelle's horse. Panicking, she slipped out of her saddle and fell to the ground.
Ivelle!
Balthian dismounted and ran to Ivelle, while the remaining two Azurescales rushed at the behemoth with their weapons drawn. With a mighty swing, one knight managed to cut through one of the behemoth's 8 legs.
I got a leg! 7 more to...
The behemoth lashed out with its fanged jaw and crushed the offending knight between its teeth, then impaled the other on its tail. Terrified, Balthian grabbed Ivelle and pulled her away from the carnage, while the behemoth once again took flight. Draining blood from its injured limb, the behemoth flew to the top of the triumvirate fortress, leaving the 4 dead Azurescales where they lay. Balthian continued to drag Ivelle from the slaughter until they reached the cover of a nearby grove of trees. As soon as they were safe, Balthian sank to his knees and began shaking in fear.
The gods! What do we do now?
Ugh! What was that? What's wrong with me?
Ivelle, what do we do?
I don't know. Why are you asking me?
You always know what to do.
No, I don't. I froze up and let all our friends die.
Okay. It killed our horses. We can either keep going, or walk all the way back to get reinforcements.
And hope we aren't banished for our failure.
And that it doesn't kill more while we're gone.
So, we have to do it. Just the 2 of us.
Well, we did want to be heroes, didn't we?
When Balthian and Ivelle finally recovered, they proceeded on foot, terrified but determined, towards the tower where the behemoth had made its roost. At the base of the triumvirate fortress, they were greeted by the gruesome sight of dozens of bodies strewn around the structure. The young knights readied their blades and cautiously approached the fort.
Hey, get in here before that thing eats you.
Balthian and Ivelle, startled, turned towards the voice and saw the fuzzy rodent-like face of a Balsavi woman peeking out of the fortress doors.
Your ear's broken? Get in here.
Inside, 2 feathered reptilians, Charcassans, sat with a second Balsavi around a makeshift campfire and a pot of unidentifiable slop. One of the Charcassans stood up to greet them.
Good. Help has finally arrived.
Hello, I am Ivelle, and this is Balthian. We're Azurescale Knights.
I am Jalanech, and this is Cardech. We are warrior souls of Charcassy.
The second Balsavi raised a pink hand in greeting.
My name is Silias.
And I am Odavia. We come from the Balsavi city named Chitante Dolsuria. Lovely place. Best city in all the Alliance.
And the closest, unfortunately.
When trading, very fortunately. But when a giant monster shows up out of nowhere...
I only hope its Charcassan victims had lived enough for great Charcassy to be satisfied with those incarnations.
Sorry, what?
Oh, not familiar with the Charcassans? Well, they believe their whole race is their god reincarnating over and over in random points in time to have every experience of mortal life. Pretty crazy if you ask me, but that's...
I wouldn't expect one of the godless to understand.
So, you Azurescales. There are more of you, aren't there?
There were. But the behemoth got them. We're all that's left.
Oh, good. That's fine. I didn't want to keep on living anyway.
Odavia, how much food is left?
With 2 new mouths, probably less than a few days' worth.
I hope the Soul Seers have already sent their own expedition to us.
Yes, surely they would succeed where the godless could not.
Oh, yeah. And how much better did the rest of your caravan guards do than these knights?
Our people are one soul. Our discipline is supreme. Do you think your disjointed patchwork of squabbling rodent cities is really superior?
There's no use arguing, Jalanech. They will not understand.
Oh, I understand perfectly. I understand that you do everything your tyrant priests want because they say they know your own soul better than you.
You blasphemous vermin!
That's enough! Balthian and I have to try to kill the monster that tore apart our friends. You might as well help us, instead of helping it by killing each other.
Do you have a plan?
I might have an idea for a plan. Do you know what drew the behemoth here in the first place? Some kind of special cargo, maybe?
Silias, do you think...
But that's never attracted any kind of monster before.
We've also never taken it out of the cities before.
What is it?
Wholesome fish, a delicacy, only found near our coasts. Your king heard about it, wanted to try some.
Of course it's your fault.
Jalanech, please. The Azurescale is right. This isn't helpful. Please forgive him. He is clearly an earlier incarnation, before Cherkasy learned temperance.
Sure. No problem. So it could be this fish. Any other ideas?
Our caravan only carried its usual goods. It must be the fish.
Do you have any of it left?
Well, we were saving it, since it is such a valuable dish, but it has absolutely gone bad by now.
That could still work. I think I have a plan, but I need all of you, and we may not all make it out alive.
Whatever it takes to make up for my cowardice.
But that thing's invincible!
No, it isn't. Our fellow knights managed to cut off one of its legs when it attacked. It can be killed.
We will help.
I'm in too. If we did bring it here, it's only right that we help to kill it.
Okay, but... fine, I'm in. If only so Jalanech can't say he's braver than me.
Silias and Odavia retrieved their crate of rotting fish from a nearby storage room, while Cardech and Jalanech found weapons and armor. And Balthian and Ivelle refined their plan. Soon, this interspecies alliance was ready to ascend to the roof. There were several stairways and ladders throughout the fortress, and the 6 heroes made use of all of them so as to surround the behemoth. Ivelle emerged onto the roof first, carrying a bucket full of reeking fish, while the other 5 waited for the right moment. The behemoth was curled up in the middle of the rooftop, licking the bloody stump where one of its legs used to be. When it noticed Ivelle, it unfurled itself, raising its tail and spreading its wings before letting out a ghastly roar. This time, Ivelle did not freeze. She raised her sword, set down the fish, and readied herself for the beast to charge. It stared at her, then at the fish, and slowly began to move.
Now!
Balthian, Cardech, Jalanech, Silias, and Odavia all rushed at the beast. Balthian and the Cherkasans began to hack away at its legs, while the Balsavi scurried up its body to climb onto the behemoth's wings and stab holes in them.
It's trying to take off! Silias, hold on!
The behemoth swiped at its attackers with its paws and wildly shook its wings to try to knock the Balsavi off. However, its movements were more sluggish than before. Blood loss had clearly weakened it.
Don't know how much longer I can hang on here!
You're doing well, Godless. Just cut off those wings a little more.
Jalanech and Cardech, moving in supernatural synchronization, converged on one of the behemoth's legs and neatly cleaved off another paw. The behemoth beat its wings furiously and began to take off into the air. The powerful movements almost flung Odavia off. She jabbed her sword into the thin flesh and slid down the wing, tearing through it. Silias saw her and followed suit. With both its wings crippled, the behemoth faltered in the air and fell back to the roof.
We did it! How do you like that, you oversized, over-legged abomination? Where will you fly to now?
Lashing its tail out in pain and fury, the behemoth swiftly beheaded Silias.
Silias, no!
The behemoth turned its attention to Balthian as he sliced through the arteries along another leg. It snarled and prepared to close its massive jaws around Balthian.
It's on me now!
Hey, don't forget about me, beast!
Ivelle swiped her blade at the monster's nose, causing it to stumble back in pain. The behemoth turned and stabbed Ivelle right through the torso with its bladed tail. Clutching her sword with both hands, Ivelle stabbed into the flesh of the tail.
This is for the Azurescales.
Ivelle wrenched her sword and sawed the blade off the behemoth's tail. She then fell backwards, dead before she hit the ground. Balthian was horrified, but he could not stop now. The behemoth's wings were crippled. Now was the time for the last part of his plan. He ran for the bucket of fish as the beast turned its lethal jaws upon Odavia.
Balthian, help us!
I'm sorry. I have to get to the fish. Keep it distracted.
May the great Charcasi value the memory of our deaths.
Balthian reached the fish as the behemoth crushed the two Charcasans with its claws. The monster turned toward the lone Azurescale as he stood at the edge of the roof with his bait. The beast approached, mangled and bleeding, but still more than capable of ripping Balthian to pieces.
All this for some stupid fish. Well, come and get it.
The monster charged on its remaining forelegs, gnashing its teeth at Balthian. Just before it reached him, Balthian stepped back off the roof, hurled the fish into the air, and grabbed the ledge. The behemoth kept going, biting the fish out of the air, and its momentum carried it over the edge, and it hurtled towards the ground. It beat its shredded wings uselessly as it fell, until it hit the ground so hard the whole tower shook. Balthian looked down and saw that it was not breathing. He was victorious. He pulled himself back up to the roof and slowly got back on his feet. Balthian looked at the bodies of his comrades, and the full weight of what had happened fell upon him like a landslide. 11 brave warriors had fallen today, and he alone got to walk away.
I took all the provisions I could carry and walked back to the nearest town, where I got a horse and reported back to the king.
But why would Hadwen then say you did it all by yourself?
It made a better story, I suppose.
Apparently, representatives of the whole triumvirate protecting the triumvirate fortress didn't make Matysia and its king look good enough.
I was lucky to be the survivor, but luck isn't very inspiring. Eventually, even I came to believe there was something special about me. For a time, at least.
So, how many of the tales we grew up with aren't true?
They probably are true. Maybe a little stretched.
You two should try to stay grounded when you're fully fledged knights. Sometimes it can't all be on one person. Sometimes others have to help, or even step in to fill places that have been left behind.
I understand. It's not too different from what we've been taught. That we're just a few of many, working to serve the needs of the hero. Or, you.
That's one way to look at it. I'm gonna go get some wine. My throat's getting dry from all the talking.
Balthian stands and heads towards a door at the back of the room. Fatine and Rusen wait patiently for his return, listening to the snow uselessly pelt the walls of the manor.